This is Our View, brought to you by the people who work for you. We are the Washington Federation of State Employees.
The wind blows high, the snow comes falling from the sky. Margaret Johnson said she'll die for the want of the golden city. The wind blows high, the snow comes falling from the sky. Margaret Johnson said she'll die for the want of the golden city.
The governor's proposed budget has sparked more than just a bit of concern as we see massive cuts in services important to everyone. And while the governor has said everything is on the table, our executive director asks, why then aren't we putting long-standing tax exemptions on the table as well?
We think in this current situation, you can't cut your way out of this $6, $7, $8 billion hole. And the governor has repeatedly said that she thinks everything should be on the table. So in our view, if our members' jobs are on the table, if state programs are on the table, we believe we should reconsider some of the tax loopholes. We think there should be tax enhancements or revenue enhancement situations that ought to be examined to see if those are alternatives. So everything should be on the table. The legislature has enacted 147 different loopholes. If you go back through time, there are thousands of tax loopholes that add up to almost $40 billion in the state legislature. That's a lot of money that could be plugging the holes in this current budget. And they range from, gold dealers, pea processors, the airspace over the stadiums. I mean, there are an incredible number of tax exemptions. I think there should be a thorough examination of all of the loopholes. If we have $40 billion worth of loopholes in this state, some of which have been on the books for 30, 40 years, maybe it's time, like the governor said in her State of the State, she wants to look at the boards and commissions to see if they're still viable. Let's look at the tax loopholes and see if they're viable. This is much more a services issue than a jobs issue. If you look through the budget, every single area, the basic health plan, government assistance to the unemployed, all of these critical budget issues are slashed in this budget. And there will be many, many people harmed. And the state is the provider of last resort in many ways, and we need to provide those services.
Federation members are visiting the Capitol nearly every day, attempting to educate our legislators on just what losing many programs will mean to our citizens, especially the ones living in less than ideal circumstances.
I'm here today to register the strong opposition of my co-workers, my union and my community to the Governor's proposed closure of Yakima Valley School. It's not about saving money. According to the Governor's own budget documents, closing Yakima Valley School will save the state about $1 million. And while some will try to justify that savings, they fail to tell you that many studies show that we actually give taxpayers a greater savings than if our clients were cared for in another setting. The disruption of the closure and transfer of our clients will have harmful effects. There is such a thing as transfer trauma. Some of our clients, would die because of it. It happened 5 years ago when dozens of Devereux School residents were moved out. It will happen again at Yakima Valley School.
I'm here to urge you to reject the Governor's proposed cut of 32 residential rehabilitation counselors in the low acuity unit at the Special Commitment Center. This cut will only make a bad situation worse and has potential for endangering our communities. The Special Commitment Center already has high staff turnover and huge overtime costs. Nearly a third of the staff have been there 2 years or less. We need to keep our experienced staff for those dangerous positions. Cutting these particular positions will lessen the institution's ability to provide active treatment, which we believe could lead to sanctions from the Federal Department of Justice. Offenders with less treatment, we believe, could also successfully sue for their release, and then these dangerous repeat sexual predators would be released back into our neighborhoods.
Nasell Youth Camp, which we should probably rename to Nasell Valley School, minimum medium security. So in the proposed budget to close Nacelle Youth Camp down, any adjudicated youth will be placed in a maximum security facility.
Senator Karen Keiser knows that just cutting programs is not a solution for Washington's economy. Serving on both labor and health care committees, Senator Keiser is in the right place at a critically right time.
It's really the worst of times and maybe the best of times, because when we have a crisis, it really forces us to be a little more creative, a lot sharper, and trying to put the puzzle pieces together so that we have a decent picture for our state is really going to create a momentum for change, and we have to have change to get through this. I chair the Healthcare Committee. I'm very aware that we have a huge shortage of workers in the healthcare field all throughout, at every level of healthcare, from the entry level, CN and LPN level, all the way up to the highest levels of professional healthcare work. So it seemed to me smart to put the issue of the growing sector of our economy, the healthcare sector, and the depressed economy we have, and put those two pieces together and try and get those newly unemployed people who are interested in going into the healthcare field into the career ladder that we just started building in our local hospitals and community colleges. So people who are unemployed could come into, say, Valley General Hospital in Renton and start working and learning at the entry-level LPN, CN level, and the CNs and LPNs who've already worked in that field could move up to the next level and start studying for RN work. And RNs could start studying and moving up to ARNP work, and so on and so on. There are many steps along the healthcare ladder, and we have so many healthcare workers that are needed. The gap is just huge. We have 12,000 jobs every year that need to be filled. So that's one of the elements of our stimulus plan that I think is really, in the end, a win-win for our state, for our people, and for the future. The people need to make their voices heard, that it is time for a new relationship, that the government can be helpful, can be a solution, can be the way out of this economic crisis that we're facing. It has been pretty obvious over the last year that the private sector has struggled and struggled and failed. In the financial sector in particular, they have failed, and we are left with a big mess that we need to clean up. And I think the public is beginning to realize that the only entity in our state and our nation that's powerful enough and big enough and working on behalf of the people is their own government. So I think it's the time that we need to step up to the plate, take it on, and get it done.
A look at our union history, here's Ross Reeder.
19 years ago this month, Seattle citizens of all stripes were faced with a general strike, the 9th general strike in the U.S., and the first citywide strike in the United States to be proclaimed a general strike. It led off a tumultuous post-World War I era of labor conflict that saw massive strikes shut down the nation's major industries and threatened civil unrest in a dozen cities. The strike began in the shipyards, which had expanded overnight with war production contracts. 35,000 workers expected a post-war wage hike to make up for 2 years of strict wage controls imposed by the federal government. When federal regulators refused, the Metal Trades Council, an alliance of shipyard unions, declared a strike and closed the yards, appealing also to Seattle's powerful Central Labor Council for solidarity. Most of the city's 110 local unions voted to join a sympathy walkout. On the morning of February 6, 1919, Seattle, population 315,000, stopped working. 25,000 union members had joined the 35,000 already on strike. Much of the remaining workforce was idled as stores closed and streetcars stopped running. The General Strike Committee, composed of delegates from the key striking unions, tried to coordinate vital services and negotiate with city officials. Events moved quickly beyond their control. Most of the local and national press denounced the strike. Conservatives called for stern measures to suppress what looked to them to be a revolutionary plot. Mayor Ole Hansen, elected in 1918 with labor support, armed his police force and threatened martial law and federal troops. Some unions wavered on the strike's third day. Most others had gone back to work by the time the Central Labor Council officially declared an end on February 11th. By then, police and vigilantes were hard at work rounding up Reds. The IWW Hall and the Socialist Party headquarters were raided and leaders arrested. Federal agents also closed the Union Record, the labor-owned daily newspaper, and arrested several of its staff. Meanwhile, across the country, headlines screamed the news that Seattle had been saved, the revolution had been broken, and as Mayor Hansen phrased it, Americanism had triumphed over Bolshevism. The Seattle General Strike lasted less than a week, but the memory of that event has continued to be of interest and importance for 90 years. For more information on this famous labor history event, go to the Harry Bridges Center.com and click on Seattle General Strike Project.
This has been Our View, brought to you by the members of the Washington Federation of State Employees. We remind you that when you accept a paycheck for your hard work, you don't give up your rights. Thank you for watching.
Thank you.